And welcome to another episode of 50 Shades and Grey. Thank you for joining us today. Last week's conversation made something very clear. Dating apps feel completely different depending on life stage. For some people, they're optional, casual, and low pressure. For many women over 35, they're intentional and emotional, tied to hope and time. But awareness alone doesn't protect your energy. So today I want to talk about how to stay intentional without becoming emotionally drained. Because the goal isn't to care less, it's to invest more wisely. The real drain isn't the rejection when we're on these dating apps. The drain comes from overinvestment into people before that's reciprocated in any way. And we all do that on dating apps because when you're full of hope and when you're looking for something, you can sometimes think it's in a lot of things when it's not actually there. So you can see a picture of someone and you can read their bio and you might have a couple of messages, but already you're starting to shape them into something that you want. And we've all done this. And it's out of hope. But in fact, we're shaping these people into something that we want and they may not be. And that's not their fault. That's us just hoping this is what we want. Because I think we all know what we want. We know what sort of person we want. We know what sort of characteristics we want. And we know what emotional values and just general morals that we want in a person. And because of hope, we sometimes try and see those way too early in people. We tend to imagine potential too early in people. So we'll have 3 or 4 messages on this app, and maybe you'll share a couple of things. And then the excitement of maybe finding that person that's your person can be overwhelming sometimes and cloud your judgment, make you not see things that you should maybe noticing about the person. And when we don't notice these things about a person, we tend to fill in a lot of the blanks with our own hope because we don't look at the things that we want to see sometimes. We we're not thinking about what this person could be, what they are. We're thinking of what we want and we hope to see it in that person. And sometimes I think we're so not desperate to find it, but we're so eager to find it that we imagine that it's maybe there when it isn't. And all we're doing is building our own disappointment sometimes. And I think the more that you're on dating apps, the more you understand this process as it goes on. And it is from experience. So you learn on dating apps because I think we all make the same mistakes very early. I know I did. When I first started using dating apps, I had 2 or 3 messages with people. I thought, God, this girl's great. This girl's great. She does this. She's going to be this way. And unfortunately, those people I met weren't like that at all, and not through their fault, but it's what I imagined. And then that disappointment was on me because I'd made myself think that this person was going to be like this, and they weren't, and that's not their fault. That was my fault for wanting something that maybe I hadn't found. And I knew what I wanted because I'd been with enough people by that stage to know the things that I wanted in someone that I liked. And most of all, the things that I didn't want. I could recognize that quite early, a lot of the time. And again, that's from experience. Exhaustion usually isn't about rejection. It's about premature emotional investment. So these dating apps that we're using, that we complain about so much, and they are just a platform. It's our human nature that tears them down a lot of the time to the lowest common denominator. And whether that be our own hope and our own relentless idea of love that we're looking for, or whether it's guys who just send you pictures of stuff that you may not want to see a lot of the time. So it's very important that we understand that as much as we complain about these apps and say that they could be better for people that are dating, it's us that make them what they are. And it's human nature that makes them what they are. And I think it's just understanding each other in this process. We're looking to match energy, not potential. So when you get a match on dating apps, and you can apply this to just dating as well, but I think more so with dating apps, don't reward inconsistency in people. So if someone says they're going to message you and they don't just say, just checking you're okay. Hadn't heard from you. If you haven't heard from someone, there's usually a reason. And if they want to tell you that reason, they will. Sorry, I couldn't message the other day. Got caught up at work. I had a few things going on. I'm really sorry. Then listen to that. Take note of it. But don't chase them to get that. Don't say, just checking you're okay, because I haven't heard from you. If you haven't heard from them, there's a reason. And if they don't give you the reason, that's all you need to know, because they didn't want to contact you in the first place. So don't be rewarding someone's inconsistency in behavior. And that people set patterns very early. And I think when you've dated a lot, you get very good at noticing patterns. And when that spider sense tingles in the back of your neck, thinking something's not quite right here, you're probably a lot of the time not too far off the mark. Sometimes you can be jumping too early and people say, oh, you're making decisions too early. But a lot of the time, if you feel something that's not quite right, a good percentage of that time is you're probably right. You're right about something's not quite right. So don't increase your effort to fix the imbalance in something. If after all of this hope that you've got in someone, and because you want to maintain momentum, and that's so vital on when you're on dating apps, it is about momentum. When something loses momentum, it dies very quickly. And even when you start seeing people, it's always about momentum. No, and that doesn't mean it has to be fast. It can be just about consistency in momentum. So if you only see someone every couple of weeks for the first 2 or 3, 4 months, then that's fine. As long as it is that and it remains consistent, and it's not when you first meet them, you see them every day for a week. And then it's like you see them once every 2 weeks and then once every 3 weeks, because then something is changing. People, it is about noticing people's behavior and patterns, definitely, because that is, people are creatures of habit. They will set, if they're very, very keen to begin with and they're sending you messages all the time and then suddenly they stop, there's usually a reason for that. So try and observe people's behavior and don't interpret it. You don't always have to jump to conclusions, but just be mindful of it. Notice these things that are happening when you're messaging people. And I was always noticed how quick people are to respond, because that sets a pattern. And it doesn't mean that you may be the sort of person that expects someone to reply straight away as soon as a message. I do. If I've been with people, and my partner now, if I message them, I know most of the time they're going to come back to me like as soon as they've read it, because that's how I am. So it's reflected. There are occasions where it doesn't happen and there'll be reasons for that, and that's fine. But behavior is general. There'll always be exceptions, but if that changes rapidly and noticeably without a reason, then that's when you should be noticing their behavior. If you usually get a text every morning offer someone saying, "Hey, good morning, how are you?" And then it starts to decline and you don't get it, like, then there's usually a reason for that. It could be a valid reason. It could be a really valid reason. And I think also, and I know I've been guilty of this in behavior of dating before, that I can get, or I did get, not now, but I used to get very, very overexcited when I met people about the potential. This could be great, and I imagined things with that person before they was actually there. And what happened with my behavior is I was full on very quickly with a couple of people, and sometimes it drove them away because I was up way too much. And other times it set a pattern of behavior that I couldn't actually live up to long term. But they wanted that, and they had every right to want that because I'd set that pattern. You know, I was on the phone for 2 hours every night and like a teenager. And after a while, what I did was I'd sort of calm myself down thinking, okay, right, I can't maintain this. This was a lot. I just need to be a lot calm. But that change in behavior to the other person was very, very noticeable. And that made them very different in their behavior. And they started questioning me, what's going on? Do you not like me as much as you used to? And it wasn't that at all in this circumstance. It was just that I'd come out of the back of something, and that anticipation of meeting someone was so overwhelming when I met this person that I was like, right, this is it. We're going to do this and we're going to do this. And then once I realized, actually, I need to slow down a little bit here because I haven't known them that long. And I'm going back to this was, God, in my mid 30s. So it was a good few years ago. And people in your mid 30s, please take note. You are still babies. You are still so young. So please enjoy it. Lots of people are getting to 30 and thinking they're older. Good grief. If you're in your mid 30s now, you've still got a load of life in front of you. So don't panic. But if someone is casual, believe them early. So if they're very relaxed in what they're doing, understand that's the way they are. And then it's your decision from then if you want to continue with that. And that doesn't mean that it won't go somewhere great. It just means that it might be, I've had lots of these relationships. I know how they work. I'm not going to get overexcited. Let's just take it day by day. And it could grow into something great. But if you're looking for something more than just casual until it's not, then you need to have that conversation early with them. So try and delay your emotional attachment. And there's practical shifts in that. There's no future in fantasizing before consistency. So unless you're seeing and noticing things in someone, don't think they are going to be that way for you. You're trying to get them to be like you want. And I've experienced this from the other side of the fence. I know in one of my relationships, I was very aware of the person that I was with wanted me to be a certain way. And as much as I could was because I really liked the person, I was trying to be that way. And as time went on, it became exhausting. And I just realized, it just wasn't me. It wasn't my style. And she liked me, and it was a really simple thing. Like, she liked me dressed in a certain way because that's how she liked her men. And that was great. It just wasn't me. We've all got our own style of dressing and the way that we are, the way that we carry ourselves. And you've got to be able within any relationship to be that person, be the way you are. And you've got to be acceptance of each other within that. You've both got to allow each other to be that person and like it. What we can't do is we can't want this other person to be what we want and think, oh, they're great in all the ways, but I just wish, if they could change that. And sometimes that could work, but like I said, humans, we're creatures of habit. So, you know, we will fall back into those things sometimes. And we've got to be really careful of that, of not pushing people into something because they, like me in that relationship, I was able to maintain it for a good few months, but eventually it wore me down and it made me a little bit resentful. And that's why, for one of the reasons, that relationship didn't work out. So things like, when you're meeting people on dating apps, don't have overly heavy texting before you meet. Don't try and get into those habits too early of treating someone like you've known them for 2 months. Morning, how are you? Hope you slept well. When you haven't met this person, because you're already establishing patterns of behavior that you may not yourself be able to maintain once you've once you've actually met them and got to know them. And then, you're setting people up yourself for the things that you don't want people to do to you. We end up having these pen pal relationships on dating apps. I mean, good grief, I had full on text relationships with people that I didn't even end up meeting, and these went on for 3, 4 weeks sometimes because, we didn't quite meet or things didn't quite work out. And we will get to that. But then you feel like you're almost in a relationship like, hey, how's your day? You've not met this person yet. And you're treating them like, it's someone that you've been dating over a year and telling them things about everything else that, is going on too early. We overshare way too early because of our eagerness to have this connection with people. And we can trick ourselves because we've seen a few photos of them on holiday and riding a horse and doing a headstand that that we know them really well and that we know the people around them really well because of what they told us. I was always, and I think I've always been this way, very skeptical of everything. So, and I don't think that's a terrible thing. Sometimes it's not great, granted, but always try and think in the back of your mind a little bit. This could be a guy on a keyboard doing this with 100 women. So always be mindful of that, especially when you're older, because I think as we grow older, we can become extremely susceptible to scams without realizing it because of we're not skeptical enough because we're so desperate sometimes to find what we're looking for that we can imagine seeing it in places where it's not. Use the analogy of going across the desert and seeing a mirage full of water because you're so thirsty that that's all you want to find. So just bear that in mind. So, don't give too much away about yourself. And those things are nicer to find out in person because you can tell a lot more by facial expressions and emotions when people are telling you these stories. So remember, you don't know someone because you've messaged them for 3 days. You really don't. So don't fool yourself into thinking that you do because someone's told you a few things. Those few things that they've told you could be absolute nonsense. They could have just made them up. So when you're on these dating apps, try to filter earlier, not late. Understand things that you want. And as much as people say, don't be too fussy, do be fussy. Please be fussy. It's the rest of your life. When these people that are with people, and it's classic, we always, we've all experienced it. Friends that go, your problem is you're too fussy. My answer always to a lot of those people was, your problem, you're not fussy enough. And that's why you're constantly moaning about your partner because they're not what you want, because you wasn't fussy enough. So be fussy, find what you want, because not finding what you want isn't a bad thing either. You might know all those things, what you want, but, and I said this in in podcasts before, I'd always much rather be alone and happy because I can be than with someone and unhappy because that's the loneliest place in the world to be. So, direct questions. sooner. Don't be scared of that. Simple things like, are you married? Ask the question because people say, well, no, of course I'm not. Fine. But you've got an answer. And notice with these questions, notice vagueness. So if the answer to these questions is, everyone's in a situation, aren't they? We've all got things going on. No, you may not have things going. If you have and you understand it, then fine. It's about finding people that are parallel to you. And if you know these situations beforehand, they're easier to deal with and allow people to tell you these situations beforehand as well. Say, have you got anyone in the background? Have you got ex partners? Have you got kids? Find these things out earlier and know what you're willing to accept and want. There was always, and it wasn't for me, but I noticed a lot of people on dating apps, women obviously, was that they didn't want people with younger kids. Now, for me, I've always been one of those people that if I like someone, and if I like them enough, I'll deal with whatever's going on. So if they had younger kids, they had younger kids, and I'd make an effort to deal with that. If you can't deal with it, then it's another conversation. But I'd always rather give it a go than just go no. But a lot of people, they don't want young kids again, especially women. I think. I think this is more a female thing, and which I understand because they are like. I've done my time with kids. I don't want young kids, and I especially don't want someone else's young kids. I don't want to be a mother to them as well. And I think that's the thing. I think a lot of women find that when they're meeting guys with younger kids, the guy is looking for someone to help them when they've got them, when they're not with their mother. And I'm a big believer that, you've got two parents. You've got your mum, you've got your dad, and other people that come into your life through if your mum and dad have divorced and they've got partners, they are just people that you meet. They can be really good friends and they can be role models, but they're not your dad and they're not your mum and they never will be. Step parents, I understand because they've had a place, but I think that's a different conversation. For me, I've always thought there's one mum, one dad, and that's it. And everyone outside that, you can love them and you can respect them and you can value their opinions and they can be like a father to you, but they're not your real father because we only have one real dad, however that character may be or mum may be in our lives. So pay attention to these effort patterns that people establish. If they're messaging you in the morning, like I've said, and it stops, or at night and it stops, or the phone calls stop, or understand patterns and recognize when they change. And there's always a reason why they change, and it could be a valid reason, but you need to find that out. So all these things that you're looking for, and they're all personal, and they're your personal things, and don't let other people sway you from those things. For me, I had some stupid things, like it was always smoking. So for me, if someone smoked, it was just I knew it was not going to work. I wouldn't be able to put up with it long term. I could go on a few dates with people, but I wouldn't be able to live with someone that smoked. And then that was also for me, that was also vaping. And that was just me. And it may be a silly thing to other people because loads of women vape. As soon as I saw someone vaping, I was done because I made that clear to people very early. And I think there's the misconception that with certain things that, oh, it's not the same, and people say, well, vaping not the same as smoking. And this could apply to many things. That's not the same as that. It may be to that person. So just, be honest with people up front, tell them, show them what you're like up front, not too much too early because you could take your time with it, obviously, ease into the relationship. But, when people ask you direct questions, be honest about those answers. Don't try and hide things in the hope that, if it's something that you're sorting out and maybe, you don't want to disclose it, be as honest as you can. Say, look, I'm still it could be that you're still living with someone and you're coming out of the relationship because you're sorting out the ins and outs of the house. Be honest about it, but make sure they know that. And if they decide to get up from the table and walk away, so be it. But what you don't want is don't think, oh, do you know what? I'm not going to say this about, my situation because if they walk up, no one's going to stay after that. So then that leaves you two choices. The first thing is sort out your situation first, because that's what that tells you. If everyone's walking away, you need to sort out your situation so you can so you can meet people and say, no, I'm free and clear. Or look for the person that stays, because that will tell you a lot about that person as well. If that person stays and goes, okay, well, I respect you telling me, and we'll work with it and see where it goes, then at least that's like, okay, this person might have something a bit more about them than some of the other people I've met. So with this, although clarity can feel confronting, confusion's a lot more expensive in the long run. So know what you want in other people, and try to be honest in both directions. So protecting your energy isn't bitterness at all. When you're meeting people for the first time, you can still be warm, you can still be yourself, but be measured. Don't throw everything into the first couple of meetings. Also, let people peel back layers of you. Don't give them everything straight away. You don't need to, because you are protecting yourself as well. And I probably got better at this way too late. I'm always an advocate for wear your heart on your sleeve. And I'd always be that, this is me, take it or leave it. It's up to you, but you can roll your sleeve up slowly. Don't go out in a cap sleeve t-shirt every time, and because people have a habit of ripping it off and stamping on it sometimes. But wear your heart on your sleeve, but be measured with it. You can still be the same warm person and show your side, but you don't have to be completely right. I'm all in on the first date. It doesn't need to be that way, because when people do it to you, it's amazing. They go, whoa, this is a bit much. Slow down, Jose. Let's take this day by day. So intentional doesn't mean intense. You can show your intentions, but we don't have to be really intense with it, because that can scare people off as well. But if their intentions scare them off, your intentions scare them off, that's different. If you still want to get married, let's say, and then you say to someone, yeah, I would like to get married one day, and they say, well, that's too soon for me. I'm never getting married. If that's something you really want, recognize that and say, okay, well, let's finish our coffee and we'll leave, and it's been really nice meeting you. And then you can share your experience on dating apps, and maybe what you will get off that person is you may learn something from them that will help you, and vice versa. You might be able to share a story with someone that you think, actually, that's really going to help me moving forward. So not everyone that you meet on dating apps is going to be of a romantic value. Maybe there'll be a value to you in many other things. Who knows? Maybe there'll be a plumber, and you might need a good plumber one day. So take the number and go, listen, romantically, we're not going anywhere, but I've got a leaky tap and that needs fixing. So I'm going to take your number because you seem like a nice guy and someone I can trust. So, it's not always a romantic value of that. And I've made some really good contacts and people that I've stayed in touch with that I've actually worked with on the podcast as well. And that's been really nice. So sometimes it's not always about romantic value dating apps. It's about, you can meet people that add value to your life along the way. So try and be calm over invested. We want to be invested in people, but take it calm, guys. Take it slowly. It doesn't have to be as much as you want to be. If you go out and have a great first date and they say, do you want to do this again tomorrow? Everything inside you could be shouting, yeah, I do. yeah, let's do this tomorrow. And I'll be honest, me even saying it, I'll be like, yeah, let's do this tomorrow. But sometimes, you know, if you have to change a load of things around and let other people down in order to do that, don't be in a rush, because if they're keen to see you again, they'll still be keen. And if you ever look back and go, do you know what? I should have gone on that second date straight away because it didn't work out. If things are not going to work out, they're not going to work out. And you emotionally investing everything so soon into this is not going to help. It's not going to change things. It's not going to change the outcome of that. It may do over time in terms of the next day, but you don't have to be much. Be calm with it. Be measured. You can still be invested, but be calm over invested. Because through all of this, this dating and trying to find someone, we're trying to find someone to make our life better. Because at the moment, for all those that are listening that are single, hopefully you're in a great place single. And what I mean by that is that you don't need anyone. You're not desperately looking for anyone to fill any gaps in your life, because you fill gaps in your life. You've got friends, you've got a good social life. You can sit on your own over a weekend and have a great time with yourself and with your thoughts. You're surrounded by love through family and through friends and through your kids if you got them, or whatever form that may be in. But you should be in a good place single. But what you're looking for is, or hoping for, is that someone else to add value to your life, someone else that can enhance your life, not make your life. If you're looking for someone to make your life and make you happy, that's a heavy weight for someone else to carry. And I'm not saying that you won't find those people, but I think it's a lot easier finding people when you're happy single. And also, that's a much better place to get back to, especially if you're dating in midlife, because lots of the times it won't work out for many reasons, because a lot of things have got to align. And when it doesn't work out, what you'll always know is that's fine. I'm sad about that, but I know I'm fine single. If you're doing it the other way, where you're so reliant on someone, you'll be so scared of going back to single, that you're going to want to stay in relationships. And that is many people. A lot of people are in relationships because they're scared of being on their own. They're not in that relationship to be in the relationship with the other person. They're in that relationship because they're scared of themselves being on their own. It's got nothing to do with the other person. And that's a shame for the other person, because maybe the other person is in it because they want to be with you, and you're in it because you don't want to be alone. And that's a whole other podcast that we'll do one day. So with all this, with dating, to finish on, is you can be hopeful without being emotionally exposed. If you're on these apps and you're still dating, let me know your stories. Let me know how it's going. And I hope this episode has helped you just maybe understand a bit more, or given you a little bit of clarity, or just listen to someone that's experienced the same things maybe that you're going through today. Thank you for listening today on 50 Shades and Grey. Make sure you subscribe and make sure you follow us on all our platforms. We are on Instagram, and we are on Facebook, and we are on TikTok. So you can see clips of everything on there and message us on there. Thank you for joining us today, guys. Take care. Have fun.